How many times have you experienced this? You get super hyped up to start your fitness journey, you get a brand new membership, you do a huge grocery haul, you go to the gym 2 days in a row, and you're feeling great. But then one day you realize you're not really in the mood for any of the groceries you bought, and then maybe you skip it on the gym one day, and that one day turns into a week, and then you tell yourself, oh, I'll just start up again next week, but next week never actually comes. If you don't know me, my name's Haley, and I'm your realistic and balanced bestie, helping you build a stronger brain and body. This is gonna be the first of a new type of series video for me, and I was really inspired by the learning paths on Skillshare, and this isn't even sponsored, I just really thought it was a good idea. So basically, I'm gonna do this one video that's sort of a summary of other videos that I already have out. So I'll put a link in the description if you want to deep dive into any of the topics that we're gonna talk about. But I'm gonna give you basically the bare bones that you need to know to be successful in your fitness journey, with those deep dives being available for any of these topics that you feel like you want a little bit more of an explanation on. Today we're gonna break down the 6 essential steps that you need to do to have a successful fitness journey. But before we get into it, please make sure you're subscribed if you're listening on YouTube, and following my podcast if you're listening on Spotify, and make sure that you check out the description below to get a bunch of free resources for your fitness and mindset journey. So when it comes to your fitness journey, the biggest issue that I've seen in the last 6 years of me being a trainer, and also the last 8 years of me doing this on my own, is that people are trying to jump around and they're just kind of bouncing around with really no direction of what they're doing. So I wanted to make these steps as chronological as humanly possible, because I really think the way that I've set them up is going to be the way that's going to give you the most success and allow you to actually stick to what you're doing. So step number 1 is to set realistic goals. And by this I mean not only setting goals that are actually realistic, but I mean goals that you realistically actually want for yourself. So basically making sure that your goals have a why behind them, because if your goal is just to lose 10 pounds because your shitty boyfriend told you that you need to lose weight, you're not going to actually want to do that, because that's not something that you have a real actual personal why behind. But if you make a fitness goal because you're like, oh, I really want to go on this backpacking journey in Europe and I know that I need to be healthy enough to walk around all day, then that's going to give you something to actually feel passionate about and actually want to work towards, because that gives you a reason to push in your journey other than just saying, oh, I want a 6-pack, or oh, I want to look like this Instagram model. That's not a reason that's going to last, and that's sure as fuck not a reason that's actually going to push you on your journey. So I personally think the best way to set a real fitness goal is to break it into 3 parts. And if you know me, you know I love a good mix of woo-woo mindset shit mixed with actual tangible shit. So this first part is gonna be kind of your woo-woo little mindset portion, but just stick with me here. So what I want you to do is to really imagine what you want your ideal life to look like when you are at your healthiest, your happiest, your most fit version of you. You want to figure out what a typical day looks like for you, but more importantly, what you want to figure out is, how does living this life actually make you feel? If you could put that feeling into a word, or just have something that you're really trying to connect to, that's going to give you something to really strive for, is that feeling. You are trying to figure out how to be on the same level as whatever feeling that you imagine having when you actually achieve this goal. And part 2 of picking your goal is to pick performance goals. Now, typically performance goals are going to be anything in the weightlifting goals realm, or maybe a cardio-based realm. So you might want to squat 200 pounds or hip thrust 300 pounds, or you might make it a goal to get your mile time down to a certain time. Any goal that's based on what you're doing and not how your body looks is going to be something that is so important to focus on, because this gives you something to actually strive for. You can actually see if you're getting closer to achieving this goal every single week, whereas if you're picking a scale-based goal, that's a lot harder to try to track and try to see if you're actually getting closer to it, because there's just so many variables when it comes to picking a scale weight goal. And performance goals also make it a lot easier for our brains to try to backtrack it a little bit. So if your goal is to squat 200 pounds, your brain can easily be like, okay, if I can squat 95 pounds right now, then I should try to do 12 reps of that. When I can do that, I'll move up to 100 pounds for 8 reps. Then move up to 10 reps of 100 pounds. And you can slowly break it down into more actionable steps that you can easily actually accomplish. And now the third part of this goal setting system is to pick an aesthetic goal, but not a scale-based aesthetic goal. So I personally don't think there's anything wrong with picking an aesthetic goal if your mindset is in the right place. So again, if you're doing it out of a healthy mindset and not out of something like, oh, I want to lose weight really dramatically and I want to drop 50 pounds in 2 weeks. That's just not realistic. So if you're picking an aesthetic goal that's something like, I want to drop 10% body fat over the next year, that's something that's actually very realistic and also still pretty trackable. But what I would recommend doing if you don't have one of those fancy scales is to just make measurement-based goals. So you might say, I want to lose 2 inches on my waist over the next 6 months, or I want to gain an inch on my glutes over the next 3 months. Whatever it might be, you want to pick an aesthetic goal, if you choose to have one, that's actually as trackable as possible. And once you have these 3 parts down, you're gonna have a goal that's actually doable, trackable, and makes you actually want to achieve it, which I think is the biggest key to actually starting your fitness journey off on the right foot. Step number 2 is to find your starting point. And now this kind of has 2 parts to it as well. One part is going to be more of an evaluation portion, and the other part is going to be more of a preparation type of portion. Now, first you have to get really real with yourself, and I think this is where most people struggle, and I can say that because this is where I struggle whenever I try to start off on going towards a new goal or doing anything new in my fitness journey. And it's because we kind of get into these ideas where we're like, oh my god, I'm gonna overhaul my entire life overnight. I can completely 180 everything and start an entire new eating regimen, a new workout routine, and I'm just gonna do everything and it's gonna be completely perfect and completely change my life. And when has that literally ever worked for anybody? So what we actually have to do is to look at our schedule, and I recommend looking at your last week's schedule because I feel like that gives us the most realistic look at what our week ends up looking like. So you want to look at your last week's schedule and try to think if there's any part in this schedule where if you didn't go to the gym or you didn't get out and do some form of movement, where could you have actually penciled that in? Is there a moment where you were sitting there spending 2 hours on TikTok and you could have taken 30 minutes of that to go on a walk? Or was there a time on Sunday that you binge watched Love Island and you could have gone to the grocery store instead? That is a direct call out at myself, to be honest. But this accountability of actually trying to figure out where you could have penciled things in and just getting honest with yourself is so important. And it's also a really realistic way to figure out your starting point and figure out what's actually realistic for you, instead of daydreaming and being like, oh my god, if I could, I would do this and I would eat all of these foods and I would go to the gym 5 days a week and I would do this, and planning out all these things that are just not actually feasible for you to fit into your life right now. Now, the preparation portion is that you really want to be proactive here and try to think of what roadblocks could stop you ahead of time so that you can actually prepare a plan to beat those roadblocks instead of getting tripped up and then inevitably falling off your plan and going right back to square one. So maybe you looked at your last week and you're like, oh, there's literally no time that I could have gone to the gym, like this bitch is stupid. So figure out what roadblocks were stopping you from doing that. Is it the fact that you had to go pick up your kids from school, or maybe the fact that your work schedule is thrown off? What can you do to help prevent those roadblocks? So if you could set up a carpooling system with someone and have them pick up your kids on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then you pick up their kids on Wednesday, Friday, whatever, the other days. So then maybe on those 2 days that they're picking up your kids, that's gonna be your moment that you're actually gonna go to the gym now. Or if you're saying, oh, I just didn't go to the gym because I got home and then I was too tired, maybe you need to take your gym clothes to work with you and go straight to the gym from work, so there's no excuses of going home first and not having the energy to get up and go back out and actually go to the gym. Or force yourself to get up earlier. I know it sucks, but as a 4:30 a.m. girly, I promise it doesn't ever get easier, but you do get more used to it. And the beauty of doing this is that you're doing it for yourself. So you're not having somebody else try to tell you what you should switch your schedule around to do. You know what is actually realistic for you, and you know what options there are that could actually help you battle these roadblocks. So what's a realistic answer for you might not be a realistic answer for somebody else, and vice versa, but you have to figure out what your plan of action is for every single roadblock that has come up and every single one that could possibly come up. So if it's grocery shopping and you think you don't have the time, look into doing pickup services or scheduling your groceries to be delivered. Whatever it is, there is always a solution to every single roadblock. Step number 3 is to make your plan. I think people make this way too complicated, and I honestly sympathize with that because there is so much content out there around fitness, and there's so many ideas and theories and things around how to lose weight, how to gain weight, how to body recomp, things you should be doing instead of other things, and what exercises you should do, what you should be eating. There is so much out there, and I honestly can't blame people for being overwhelmed. But the truth is that if you are completely starting out, or if you're restarting your fitness journey, or if you've just never actually stuck to any kind of program, any kind of diet, any kind of anything at all, then there are only really 3 things that you need to learn to do for any goal that you have. Number 1 is hydration, number 2 is protein, and number 3 is figuring out your carbs. Now again, this is pretty much just a general rule of thumb, but genuinely, as someone who has trained over 200 people, this is the starting point for every single person, no matter what your goal is. So if you can nail these 3 things down, then you can start to worry about more specific protocols and figuring out more intense things to do, training wise, nutrition wise, all of that. But this is the perfect starting point. So when it comes to hydration, the easiest way to start this off is by drinking half of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 120 pounds, then you're gonna drink 60 ounces of water every single day. And this is just a really great base point to figure out what your hydration levels really are. If you notice that your pee is clear from drinking this much water, that means you're on a pretty good track. If not, then maybe you need to add an extra 16 to 24 ounces and kind of see if that makes a difference for you. I know it's commonly talked about and everyone talks about your pee should be clear, but that's because it really is such a great way to determine if you're actually getting enough water or not. And honestly, sometimes the most simple rules and simple things to look out for are actually the best. So let that be your starting point. Now for protein, I know that we all hear that you should be getting 1 gram per pound of body weight, and the truth is that's really not all that accurate, and it's more of just an easy guideline for people to aim for. But I genuinely think that that was more made with males in mind, because it's a lot easier for a man who's 160 pounds to be like, oh, I'll just eat 160 grams of protein, and that's something that's really easy for them to do. But when you start to switch that into women's physique and women's eating habits, it's not that realistic if you're 190 pounds to try to get 190 grams of protein in. So what you need to do is actually to aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. Now I actually have a calculator linked below that will do all of it for you, but this is going to make it so much more realistic for you to actually hit your goals, and it's going to make you feel a lot less overwhelmed. But if you don't want to track and you're completely against even knowing your protein goal number, I would recommend starting by just trying to get 3 to 4 servings of protein every single day. And this is actually what I've been doing recently, and it's made such a difference because it's a lot less stressful than trying to figure out numbers, and it's a lot easier for me to look at my meals as a whole and make sure that I'm getting a serving of protein with every single meal, and even getting in an extra protein snack or an extra protein source of some kind in my total day. And lastly, when it comes to carbs, I'm gonna make this so simple for you. You should be eating carbs in relation to how much you move. So if you're working a desk job all day and you sit down for 8 hours a day and then you go home and don't do any movement, you're gonna need less carbs than somebody who is working a serving job all day and they're on their feet for 10 hours and they're constantly walking around. And the exact amount is obviously gonna differ from person to person. Again, I do have a calculator linked below that's going to tell you what your carbs should be. But again, if you don't want to do any kind of tracking at all, a great place to start is if you're more sedentary and you know that you spend most of your day sitting down, starting with just 1 to 2 servings of carbs per day is a really great place to start. And on the flip side, if you're more active and you know that you are up and moving majority of the day, starting with 3 to 5 servings of carbs per day is a pretty great place to start as well. And what I find that works really well with most people is trying to get majority of those carbs in at the start of your day, especially if you're a very active person, because this just gives you more energy to sustain throughout your entire day. Step number 4 is battling gym anxiety. And I really think this is the thing that makes everything feel so much worse about starting our fitness journey than it really is, because people are constantly scared that they're being watched, they're scared that they're being judged, they're scared that they're gonna do something wrong. And honestly, the fear of being watched in the gym is something that you really just have to snap yourself out of. And I think what sucks is when people say, oh, nobody's looking at you, nobody even knows that you're there. And it's like, while that is kind of true, it's also not true, because when we're in an enclosed space and nobody's on their phones, everybody is just working out and they're probably just staring off into space, you are going to be being looked at. But it's not because you're being judged. So I think what sucks is people say, oh, nobody's going to look at you and nobody's going to even notice that you're in the gym. And then people go to the gym and they say, oh my God, no, people are looking at me. It's like, yes, people are looking at you because you were just in their line of sight. You were just in the way of where their eyes are going while they're working on this machine, or while they're in between their sets and they're just staring off into space. They probably are looking at you, but they are not judging you. And one of the easiest ways to try to snap yourself out of thinking that someone's judging you is by having a plan and having an idea of what you're doing, because then it's going to be so much easier for you to snap yourself out of it and be like, oh, okay, no, this dude's just looking at me because I'm in the way. And obviously, yes, there are some creepy dudes that are going to be actually staring at you, but as a whole, if someone is looking at you, they're probably not even realizing or processing that they are looking at you. And I say this because I know I do this all the time on accident, and it's so hard to snap out of, but it's also hard because I'm going to the gym at 5 in the morning and my brain is not fully turned on. I'm just kind of zoning out in between sets, and sometimes even while I'm doing an exercise. And so when I feel like someone's staring at me, I just remind myself, oh my God, I probably just looked at like 10 to 15 different people on accident and was zoned out in their direction, and that's probably what's happening right now. So we have to deal with the actual root of that fear, which is people thinking I'm doing something wrong, or me doing something wrong, or me looking stupid, because the root of that is just not knowing what you're doing. And luckily, not knowing what you're doing is something that is easily fixable, because knowledge is everywhere and we can always learn to figure out new things to do. You can easily come up with a plan, whether you find something on TikTok or somebody's PDF program, or you use my app Duality for 2 weeks free to figure out your new fitness program. Whatever it is, having something pre-made for you and having something that you already know what you're gonna do is going to take off so much stress, especially if it's something that has videos laid out for you, or something that you've already looked at and you already know how to do, or you've practiced the move on your own and you just have some sort of confidence built around that move. That's gonna help you so much. It's also super helpful to just know the general layout of your gym. So even if you go straight to the gym and you just walk on the treadmill for a little bit to kind of get a sense of your surroundings and see where everything is, that is my biggest hack when I go into a new gym for the first time. Even though I don't really like cardio and I don't like spending a lot of time on the treadmill, I will do it when I go to a new gym, purely because I'm trying to scope out the scene. I want to see where everything is. I want to have a general sense of where I need to walk to when I get off this treadmill, because that saves me the anxiety of pacing back and forth and kind of standing in the middle of the gym and just looking around and not knowing where I am. And I know it can feel dumb to think that you can just fight gym anxiety by planning ahead, but I promise you it makes such a difference. And on top of that, having a really good playlist set out ahead and making sure that you actually like your outfit is a huge key in this, because then that kind of eliminates any thoughts of, oh my God, I bet they don't like my outfit, because if you like your outfit, you don't give a fuck what people think about your outfit. So really trying to make sure that you do the teeny tiny things that you think don't matter, because those teeny tiny things really do matter when it comes to getting your stress levels down and feeling comfortable in the gym. Step number 5 is to find a recovery routine. And recovery is so overlooked when it comes to people's fitness journeys, and that frustrates me so bad, because your recovery is literally where your muscle comes from. Your muscle is built in your sleep. It's not built when you're working out. So making sure that you get enough rest and that you're actually refueling your body properly is the biggest key to actually seeing results. And if that means that you have to put yourself to bed like a literal toddler, then so be it. Because if you're getting any less than 6 hours of sleep a night, you are not recovering properly, and your body is literally screaming for help. Hydration and listening to your body are also a really big key in recovery, and that's why starting with that half your body weight in water is a really great place to start. But if you still feel like you're extra fatigued and like you're just not recovering enough, that might be when it's necessary to add in some extra water, or even just getting in some more electrolytes into your daily intake could be really helpful. If you can stay hydrated and aim for 6 to 9 hours of sleep a night, I promise you, you're gonna feel like a completely new person, and you are gonna notice so many gains that you have literally noticed ever in your entire life. Step number 6 is to push yourself. And I know that sounds redundant, because you're like, Haley, any fitness journey means that I'm pushing myself. But no, a lot of us are not pushing ourselves hard enough in our actual lifts. And I can say that because I did it and I still struggle with it. So let me tell you how I snapped myself out of it, and let me tell you how I actually push myself now. So as a general rule, you want about 80% of your sets to be pushing close to failure. And close to failure means that if you were to try to do 2 to 3 more reps, you would be physically incapable of doing those 2 reps. So you always want to try to be in that realm where you're 2 to 3 reps away from failure. But the problem is that this can be really hard to try to actually judge. And it can also be scary. I'm not gonna lie, it can be scary to be like, I think I might fail in 2 to 3 reps. And that's a scary thought for my brain to have, because I don't want to fail. I don't want to have to drop this weight on the ground. So you probably are subconsciously leaving yourself way further away from failure than you actually are. So some of the best ways to know if you're actually pushing yourself close enough to failure is if your heart rate starts to increase, or if you notice that you're really having to focus on your breath because it's getting a lot harder to really take deep breaths while you do the move, or if you feel like you're actually noticing your muscles start to fatigue or start to shake. And this is different from feeling a burn, and I think that's kind of the problem. Is a lot of people feel that burn and they think, okay, my muscles fatigue, I'm good, that's it, I'm done. And the burn is not necessarily something that means that you're close to failure at all. You could get a burn in an exercise 3 reps in, and you could actually go to 20 or 25 reps before you actually reach fatigue on that. So you have to snap yourself out of using the burn as your point to stop the exercise. And the way that I've been testing myself lately, because again, I struggle with this really, really heavily, is I will do a set. Say I'm doing leg extension for 10 reps, and I'm gonna take a break of 3 deep breaths. So I'm just taking 3 deep breaths, and then I'm going right back in and trying to do 10 reps on the leg extension. And now if I can get over half of those reps, so if I could get 5 or more reps on that leg extension after only taking 3 deep breaths in between, then I am nowhere close to failure. Because if I was actually close to failure, I shouldn't be able to even go right back into that set and get more than 2 reps on that exercise, because my muscles should be so fatigued. I should be so absolutely gassed that the idea of doing anything more without at least a 2-minute rest in between should be absolutely impossible. So on any exercise that you're doing, if you think you're getting close to failure, complete your exercise, then take a 3-count breath, and then try to go right back into it. And if you can get over half of the same amount of reps that you just did, you gotta up that weight. I'm so sorry to say it, but that's all it is. If you want to really build your muscles up, you have to use progressive overload. And luckily there are a lot of ways to utilize progressive overload. So you don't only have to add weight every single time. You can add more reps, you can add more sets, you can slow down your tempo, or you could do things like adding pause reps into your exercise. There are so many variations of progressive overload, and they are all going to help you achieve the same outcome, which is getting stronger in whatever exercise you're doing. The goal in general is to pick one form of progressive overload for every single time that you complete an exercise. And again, this isn't always going to be possible, but it's something that I want you to go into every single workout thinking about. So trying to hit a new PR on every single thing, even if it's physically not possible, because just pushing yourself and making it a habit to try to strive for that next level up is going to really help you switch your mindset, and it's going to help you stop being afraid of failure, because you're going to realize that it's not that scary to fail, and you're going to actually figure out what your failure point actually feels like. And if you're overloading your muscles as well as doing all of these other steps, I can guarantee you are going to have a transformation that is going to absolutely shock you. If I had to pick favorites, I would say that step 3 and step 6 are kind of the real keys here, but I do still think that working in chronological order is really the best way to go about this and to actually make sure that you're going to make real changes in your mind and your body. But like I said, if you want more deep dives onto any of these topics, I do have specific videos for each one of these steps that I'm going to link down below, so that you can kind of decide, oh, maybe I need more help on recovery and I want to know every single way that I could improve my sleep and improve my recovery. Lucky for you, it's linked below. Or if you have a more specific goal like fat loss, muscle gain, or body recomp, I do have videos on all 3 of those topics that's going to give you a little bit more detailed take on achieving those different goals. So I would highly recommend that as well. I promise whatever it is, I have an entire episode on it. So take a look and pick and choose what you really want to dive in on. Please do me a huge favor and comment below the step that you think that you're going to struggle with the most. And if you plan on starting your fitness journey right after this episode, please tag me on Instagram at Haley Lene so that I can follow along. As always, if you want more guidance on your fitness and mindset journey, you can get 2 weeks free of my fitness and mindset app Duality in the link below, and I highly recommend doing it because we have a fun time over there. And other than that, I've got nothing else for you. So until next time, be kind to your mind, to your body, and to others, and happy healing.